Whew, the morning's kind of got away from me. I always forget I've got company till the last minute, it seems. But I am glad to see you all here again. Welcome, once again, to Cozy Horror, with me, Dr. Plague. Let's get going and see if we can't find some great stories again for you, my dear, dear friends. Coming to us first from APCleriot, another great contributor to this station, we have a story about some urban explorers that maybe bite off a little more than they can chew. Let's hear a story about being thrown to the dogs. I love my older brother, but sometimes I wish he'd died. We were kids. I was only 10 and he was 16. He had just got his driver's license, and we went everywhere in our town because we'd seen so little of it growing up. Every night, Jack would make some excuse to take our family K-car, they don't make them anymore, somewhere, and our parents would always go along with it. They knew we were just excited to explore this new freedom my brother had attained. "Fine, but take Peter with you," my mom said. I could tell Jack was a bit irritated to have to bring me everywhere. I was his luggage, as he and his friends had so affectionately defined me. I could have made an excuse not to go, give him a little space, but I loved my brother. If he was doing something, then it was worth doing, and I couldn't stand to hear about it secondhand. I wanted to be there, sharing his cool experiences with his group of high school friends. I had no friends my own age. I guess I really had no friends. One such friend of Jack's was Kyle, a goofy, intense guy who could never really sit still. He always wanted to pick me up and spin me around. I hated it. Jack made him stop when he noticed how uncomfortable it made me. On what turned out to be our last drive around Bridal Veil Lake, we picked up Kyle. He was waiting on the porch in the rain and looked to be in a pissy mood. His discontent worsened when he saw me riding shotgun. "Jack, really? You brought the kid?" "Get in the back, Pete," Jack said. I crawled between the front seats, and I was happy to be there. I didn't care where I sat. Kyle got in the car and slammed the door behind him. "Drive," he snapped. "What's your problem?" Jack asked as he backed out of the driveway. "Nothing," Kyle said. Didn't really seem like nothing. Parents are being jerks again. I didn't understand then that Kyle's parents were alcoholics, and nasty drunks to boot, and his home life made ours look perfect by comparison. "Sucks, dude. You want to stay at our place tonight?" Kyle didn't answer. He stared out the window. "It's that way." "The nunnery?" "No, the 7-Eleven. Yeah, the effing nunnery. What else?" "You better cool it with the attitude or you can walk," Jack told him. What could Kyle say to that? Jack could kick him out anywhere. Then he'd have a sad walk back home in the rain. I kinda liked that idea. We drove for a while in silence until Kyle finally apologized. "Sorry, man, this was supposed to be fun." "It's no biggie," Jack said. Our dad would say that too, whenever we messed up. "We're going to the nuns?" I asked, as the reliant little K-car crossed the intersection of Ferry Street, where our old house used to be. Neither of them answered the question. The neighborhood, as most know, has the special privilege of being located a few blocks from a psychiatric hospital and a closed-down nunnery. The two institutions used to be associated with each other. Nuns were also nurses during the Korean War, treating vets with PTSD. The nunnery had been vacated since 1970, way before I was born, and while the Catholic Church still owned the land, they seemed to have forgotten about it. Castle-like walls on the ground were torn apart by strands of strangling ivy. Trees that had been cared for became imbalanced and toppled before slowly dying in the mud. The big house, the convent I supposed, where all the nuns used to live, lost its white paint to the elements, and a big crucifix had been dragged from somewhere inside and thrown into the dried-out fountain. This was what I remember of the nunnery before we moved. When we pulled onto the shoulder of the gate, the crucifix hadn't moved in the intervening years. "Right where I left it," Kyle said to himself. I wasn't sure if he meant the crucifix or something else. Maybe I didn't hear him right. The rain had intensified and created a racket on the windshield and the roof. I didn't bring an umbrella, Jack said. Buy you a whole raincoat after, Kyle said. Are you sure it's not stealing? Jack asked. How the hell is it stealing? Nobody owns it. Kyle had apparently been visiting the nunnery a few times to pillage items left behind. He'd sold a rug and some silverware to a pawn shop and made a few bucks. But he wasn't the only one with the same idea. On our second expedition, he'd heard some movement on the second floor and gotten freaked out and run away. Any intelligent person would give up at that point and get a job. Kyle thought it better to rope Jack into the scheme. Jack was big, tough, and calmly fierce if the situation called for violence. I'd seen him take down the DeRollo twins during an argument over baseball. They attacked him, so it wasn't wrong that he defended himself with a baseball bat. The twins had ended up in the ER. They're bound to have some good stuff in the basement, Kyle said, and the rain's letting up. Let's go. Jack turned to the back seat. You should stay here, Pete. This won't take long. What? No way. I'll lock the door, Jack pleaded. Just lie down. No one will see you. I shook my head. No, Jack, I can't. Someone will get me. Kyle chuckled, but Jack shut him up with a glare. Okay, stay close and be quiet. It felt like a dream. Wet gravel crunched under my sneakers. I stepped in a deep puddle because I had stared up at the dark windows, wondering if anyone or anything was staring back. Jack, I said, I'm scared. I don't want to go in. He didn't seem to hear me. Kyle opened the door slowly and turned on his flashlight. The end of the beam showed an empty hallway and a set of stairs leading to the second floor. Kyle went inside. Jack guided me forward and knelt down to say, Stay in front of me where I can see you, okay? Sorry for bringing you here. I know it seems spooky, but it's just an old building. If there's anyone here, they're probably homeless and just trying to stay warm and dry. They won't bother us. He turned on his flashlight and handed it to me. I felt a little better after the pep talk. It was dark, and it smelled like a church mixed with dirt, but that was all. Or so it seemed. In his usual impatient, agitated way, Kyle went ahead, making a ruckus as he opened drawers in an adjacent kitchen and swearing when he found nothing of value. He appeared in the hallway and grasped a doorknob sticking out of the wall I had failed to notice. This is the basement, but it's locked. As soon as he said locked, the practically seamless door swung open, which was the cause for more swearing. Kyle had been counting on the lock because he thought it meant the basement and its imagined loot were untouched. No point now, Jack said. He laid a hand on my shoulder and started to turn away. Whoa, wait, we can at least take a look, Kyle said. Jack hesitated, and I remember distinctly how he gripped my shoulder and crouched slightly to look me in the eye. What do you think, Pete? I thought we never should have come here. What I said, however, was that we should take a look. I didn't want to be luggage anymore. Jack giving me the power to choose felt like an opportunity. Yeah, nice, Kyle said. He gave me a high five and rustled my hair. Kid's getting cool. It was the nicest thing he'd ever said to me. Jack smirked. He's always been cool. You're just slow. The chuckle from Kyle was forced. He looked momentarily stung by the barb. I think it was then that I began to realize how important my brother's approval was to Kyle. Come on, Jack said. We're wasting time. I opened the door, the nervous energy returning to Kyle. He was like a dog excited for a walk. My flashlight illuminated rough stone steps worn smooth by the passage of 1,000 feet. The walls were similar, though rougher, and there were hooks supporting oil lamps because no electricity had been extended to this part of the building. Creepy, I said. Yup, Jack agreed. Come on. Kyle took the lead again as we descended the cylindrical shaft to a shockingly wide and long corridor. The arches in the ceiling, the floor, the walls were all constructed with red bricks, shedding their mortar. Someday, the weight of the house above would crush the tunnel. I hoped it wasn't today. What is this place? Jack asked. Kyle shrugged. Looks like a dungeon. Look at I started. The tiny barred window at one of the 6 identical doors I'd been pointing at changed. There had been some movement there, like dirty fingers retracting from a cell. "What is it?" my brother asked. I continued to shine the light at the tiny window, but the sound of a shuffling footstep further along the corridor snatched my attention. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "Hear what?" "Nope," Kyle added quickly. He didn't look scared or was working hard to seem like it. There were 3 cell doors, evenly divided on the sides of the corridor. At the farthest end there stood a heavier door, blockaded with boards nailed to the frame. "It's a passage to the hospital," Jack concluded. "The nuns must have done some work here." He didn't add that the work in question was funerary. I found that out later, and far too late. Not that knowing at that moment would have changed the outcome. Like the idiot he was, Kyle went to the big old door at the end and tried to pry the boards away. "What are you doing?" Jack asked. "Probably leads to the hospital." "Right," Kyle said. The board ripped off. Water-soaked and termite-infested wood crumbled in his hands. "So it isn't in use anymore. Maybe it was used for storage for a while." He didn't say if he meant the nuns or the current hospital staff across the street. Taking things from them would certainly be stealing. And Jack wasn't interested. "Hey man, we're not stealing from the hospital." "Of course not," Kyle said, too slowly for my liking. "I meant the nuns. Maybe the nuns left something." "Why would anyone leave something valuable behind a nailed-up door?" I asked. "Ever hear of buried treasure, Pete? Besides, like you said, we should look. Come on, it's fun." It was gross and dirty. I didn't move and continued to look at the cells flanking our position in the corridor. There were piles of rubbish underneath a moldy workbench near the bottom of the steps. I encouraged us to search there first, but they were too committed to tearing off the planks. That's when I heard the murmur of a prayer. "Guys," I said, but they were focused on the door. The voice continued in frantic whispers. "Please, beg you, Michael, do not abandon me." I thought someone was in one of the cells and that they might be afraid of us. If I were homeless, I'd probably stay in an abandoned place and be afraid all the time about somebody wanting to hurt me, too. "It's okay," I said, still unsure where the scared voice had come from. "We're not out to hurt anybody." Kyle pulled the last plank off the door at that very moment. "Guys," I tried again, but they were talking about what to do next. The door still wouldn't open. Kyle wanted to kick it down. Jack thought they should think about it first. "Here, come here," the voice said quietly, and this time I knew which cell it came from. "Hello?" "I'm in here," sounded like a man whispering. "Help me, I'm here. Please come." "Guys," I said loudly, and unfortunately at the same time, Kyle started laying his boot onto the passageway door. I moved closer to Jack, and we exchanged a look. He was sweaty and afraid. "There's somebody in that cell," I told him. "What?" He didn't understand. Kyle's boot plunged through the rotten door. Immediately a current of smelly air was freed to caress our faces and our bodies. "There's somebody..." Jack reached for Kyle too late. His dumb friend rammed his body into the remnants of the door, and instead of stopping him, Jack tripped and fell on top of him. That's why I was the only one to see. Ahead, a gently curving ramp ascended, and against a painted wall came the shadows of what I can only describe as a king. His silhouette wore a tall and ornately evil crown, and he laughed as the shadows of several leashed dogs tugged him down the ramp. The shadows, however, were all that appeared. Nobody came down that ramp, only the laughter and the heavy breathing of the dogs. Jack scrambled backwards off his friend, and Kyle crawled out of the tunnel doorway. There was nothing to be seen there, yet I knew. They did too, despite their eventual denials. Something evil lurked ahead, and it had seen us. Leashes slapped the floor as if dropped, and padded feet and claws scrambled for purchase on the smooth concrete. The dogs had been let go. It sounded like it, the tunnel still appearing empty. "Run!" A female voice shouted from one of the cells. "Run! Run!" Her screams rang in my ear. I didn't know who ran first or how I ended up at the door at the top of the basement stairs. When my hands couldn't turn the knob, my legs gave out. The invisible horror pursued us. Jack raged against the basement exit. Strong arms wrapped around my wrist and lifted me and turned. Kyle was screaming in my ear. "Jack!" I called. He turned around and saw that Kyle had picked me up as a human shield. "Jack!" I pleaded. He just watched as Kyle threw me at the growls as they climbed the stairs. I hit the landing and felt their teeth sink into my flesh. The animals tore away my skin and feasted on my muscles. I was still alive when they pierced my stomach. When would I die? The pain made me wish for death. Torrid screaming from below, from the cells, suddenly faded. The ordeal was ending. Only one pained howl remained. Mine. "Pete! Pete! Pete!" Jack said, over and over. The basement doorway was open now, and Kyle walked through it. Jack picked up whatever was left of me and placed what had to be my mangled corpse in the back seat. "Dad will be mad about the blood," I said. Confusion entered Jack's concern. "What blood, Pete? There's no blood. You're fine." He went to the driver's seat and started the car. Kyle wouldn't look at us. "Sorry," he said before exiting the car at his house. "Sorry, Pete. I'm sorry you fell. Tried to catch you. It was a lie. I didn't have the will to deny it, though. By the time we got home, I realized there really wasn't any blood or physical injuries at all. I got out of the car and followed Jack inside. Our parents were watching TV in the living room while we ate Neapolitan ice cream in the kitchen. It seemed very normal until Jack put me in bed and stretched out in his. We shared a room. "You okay, Pete?" "Yeah," I lied. "But what happened there?" He stared at the ceiling. "I don't know." That was the last we spoke of the nunnery. Jack stopped driving for fun. I stopped hanging out with him. I didn't see Kyle again until a decade later. I was waiting for an order at a burger place, and a completely hairless man walked in. I didn't recognize him as Kyle until I was on my way home. I don't know why he lost all his hair, and I didn't care. My brother and I grew apart pretty fast. He hadn't tried to stop Kyle. None of us should have broken into the nunnery. I never forgot the feeling of being torn apart by those dogs. I'd only seen their shadows cast on the walls of the tunnel in my waking life. In my nightmares, they were huge mutts with bloodied maws. The Dark King remained a shadow in both worlds, revealing nothing more of himself but cruel laughter on the wrong side of midnight. I try so hard to sleep, but it's not much better to meet him in my dreams. It might be worse. Jack had been in university a few years by the time I reached high school and gained access to drugs and alcohol. While his life took off into careers and family and prosperity, mine declined. I never finished high school, became addicted, and struggled to make a connection with anyone. Eventually, my parents and Jack ceased contact altogether. I'm alone, but never truly alone. His shadow follows. Sometimes I can smell his dogs. Nothing short of total substance-based annihilation of my mind provides temporary reprieve. I tried therapy, but the experts call my experience a delusion and put me on strong antipsychotic meds that don't work. I went to a priest, but he kicked me out and said I should see a doctor. Rehab didn't work, obviously. So I'm writing to all of you. Maybe you can help. At least, if you care enough to have read this far. The nunnery isn't hard to find. I think I have to go back. Most of whatever I am is still there. The dogs want to rest. The king is indifferent, so long as I suffer. I'm tired. There's comfort in giving in and giving up. I'll be waiting in one of the cells with the others. They know. They understand. I hate you, Jack. I miss my brother. Man, APCleriot sure can write a story. I'm gonna have to look and see if they've got any new stuff. It's been a while since I've read them on the channel. Moving to another great writer, Majestic Activity 6, we hear about an ancient evil that draws people in and takes them for everything and maybe more. So let's hear a story about the tomb of Malice. I've always been passionate about exploring caves and tombs, particularly those that are uncharted and mysterious. The thrill of venturing into these deep, dark spaces where few dare to tread is something that never fails to excite me. Even when faced with the most perilous and deadly caves, I remain undeterred by the danger, embracing the adrenaline rush to the fullest. Despite being well equipped and prepared for an expedition, there were moments where I feared for my life and believed that my time might be up. I even left farewell messages on my phone for my family, knowing that I had no children to worry about leaving behind as a father, and no teammates to slow me down on this solo cave exploration. Today, I stumbled across the most thrilling tomb I've ever encountered. It remains unexplored by anyone else, so I'm eager to be the first to explore and document the incredible findings awaiting within. I spent 3 months getting ready for my next dive, feeling both excited and nervous about what I might find. In a remote area of the earth, I stumbled upon something hidden deep underground within a cave system far away from civilization. This cave was unique, with a vertical and damp structure that required the use of ropes for navigation. As I descended down the shaft, I came across the entrance to the tomb, adorned with what looked like an image of a mysterious religious figure, covered in robes and being carried to an unknown destination. The rest of the decorations were obscured by dust, and it was only during my second dive that I noticed them. Lucky for me, I had my phone to capture photos of the decorations, for mapping purposes, before proceeding any further. Additionally, I had a torch and a spare flashlight, with various gear to illuminate my path as I went deeper into the darkness. As I descended the stairs, I observed the walls and brick structures, unsure which historical era that brick reminded me of. Upon entering the initial room, I noticed dusty murals adorned the walls, alongside empty torches, with the murals written in ancient Latin, a language I'd studied during my adventures in exploring. The initial mural displayed the following message: "This is not a place where riches or devotion can be found, but a prison filled with the specter of death. Retreat now, or face an endless torment." The text sent chills running down my back. It was unlike any tomb I had ever been in before, but my curiosity pushed me to delve deeper. I snapped a few pics and studied the second mural. The message on the second one was written like this: "This prison that we have built is meant to be untouched and undisturbed. It should be left behind, forgotten forever. May God protect us from him." I found myself pondering, may God protect us from him. It was evident that this location did not appreciate intrusion. Despite contemplating a retreat, the rush of adrenaline I experienced was unlike anything I had felt before. Against my better instincts, I decided to press on. The mural room opened up to a staircase that descended even further, prompting me to ponder just how far down it went. The sound of my footsteps reverberated through the empty staircase, indicating that the descent went on for quite a distance. Eventually, the stairs came to an end, revealing a massive room adorned with various artworks. "This find is the most incredible find of the era," I said out loud. The walls of the room were adorned with artwork, expanding upward and upward for a minimum of 30 meters. One particular detail caught my eye. Could these artistic walls be serving as a guidance or direction? Possibly for individuals like me who had overlooked the murals and continued exploring anyway. The main focus of the artwork was on a gathering of individuals dressed in unfamiliar attire, worshipping an altar emanating a dark gas that contained eerie faces showing a range of emotions from delight to fear. I noticed and observed the man laying on the altar, black gas escaping from his chest. Despite his efforts to contain the cloud with his hands, it was unsuccessful. As I was busy capturing multiple photos of the artwork from different angles, I suddenly heard a low growl emanating from several directions. I heard the sound of large stones rumbling, which indicated to me that it was time to quickly make a retreat. Having captured photographs and explored to a satisfying extent, I planned on returning at a later time. Unfortunately, while I was rushing up the stairs, I narrowly escaped death when a massive rock almost hit me in the head. I quickly ran back down the stairs when the way ahead to the entrance was completely blocked by an enormous boulder. It was a dreadful situation, far worse than any cave mishap I had encountered before. There seemed to be no escape, and my mind immediately turned to thoughts of my family, my friends, my past cave expeditions. Surprisingly, I found myself thinking about exploring again. Despite feeling scared and vulnerable, I realized I should have been better prepared with the right gear. By then, it was already too late, though. It was as if the cave was beckoning me further in, though, enticing me to continue exploring. I was trying to go home, but I realized I was unable to leave. The tomb had summoned me, and I had no choice but to go on. As I made my way to the art room, I wished and hoped for a different way out, when all of a sudden my torch died, enveloping me in total darkness, causing me to trip and scatter the contents of my bag everywhere. As my hands groped for my spare flashlight, I was startled by the sound of singing emanating from the shadows, singing a language that seemed unearthly and ancient to me. In a state of panic, I unintentionally kicked various objects into the darkness, including my flashlight, which I inadvertently switched on. Frantically searching for the flashlight, I began to see faces emerging from the shadows. The volume of singing increased. The faces in the shadows began to smile at me. But as soon as I switched on the flashlight, everything came to an abrupt halt. My heart was racing uncontrollably. I needed to pause and collect myself for a moment, and after gathering my gear, I proceeded to venture deeper into the tomb. As I'd injured my leg by accidentally kicking my gear, I was unable to run and had to take slower steps while passing through the next chamber. There was a lot of artwork that caught my attention, and I quickly snapped photos to study later. One piece in particular depicted the man from earlier on the altar, standing amidst the eerie black smoke and terrifying faces. Another showed the figures from earlier paintings, lifeless, engulfed in the black smoke seeping into their wounds. Besides this room, there was another chamber where sculptures of deceased individuals with horrifying expressions were positioned, all of them appearing to bow down to the man wearing a crown made out of human skin on the altar. I didn't even think about capturing this moment on my phone. I was more focused on finding the exit. Another set of stairs descended further into the darkness, my legs refusing to move. I was consumed by terror, a sensation of an otherworldly presence emanating from below, followed by the resumption of eerie singing, which spurred me to glance backwards, only to find nothing in sight. Out of nowhere, my legs collapsed, causing me to tumble down the stairs, leaving me covered in bruises and injuries, and I had no strength to stand back up. What I witnessed came close to stealing everything I had. I found myself in the grand altar room, which was adorned with towering pillars and statues of deceased individuals. The torches cast a dim light, despite the flames burning black. Sunlight was pouring through the broken gap in the wall of the room, providing me with a potential escape route. In my frantic rush to depart, I overlooked or possibly ignored the figure lying on the altar. The individual depicted in the paintings and the artwork appeared in a distorted position with dark gas enveloping his mouth and chest, giving him a zombified and paralyzed appearance that deviated from his usual depiction. Stupidly, I began moving on my hands towards the sunlight, because my legs were frozen. Upon awakening, the corpse-like man's lifeless fingers began to move, while dark gas slowly escaped from his mouth. I screamed and hurriedly crawled towards the opening, making sure to keep my phone in my pocket while abandoning the bag and my flashlight to lessen the burden, relying solely on the lights of the torches and the sunlight to guide me. I turned around and saw the man standing there, with frothy gas coming out of his mouth. Inside him, there were more faces that seemed to be singing a melodious tune, urging me not to leave. I made a conscious effort to ignore them. Out of nowhere, the man began running towards me at an incomprehensible pace, with dark fog foaming out of his mouth and revealing sinister faces, embodying pure evil. He jumped at me and seized my legs, dragging me towards the altar. I kicked and kicked with all my might, with my now unparalyzed legs, but my efforts were in vain. Desperately, I clawed at the loose dirt, yearning for the sun. The man exerted more force, causing several bones in my leg to break completely. I yelled until my voice was hoarse, yet I managed to hold firm to the ground. I was on the brink of freedom, yet it was so far when I chose to kick once more, this time connecting with his deteriorating face, causing him to release his grip on me. With my fingers outstretched, I took one last attempt to reach the warm sunlight, but I fell short of escaping through the hole. The man from the altar attempted to jump towards me again, but he inadvertently came in contact with the sunlight, causing him to recoil. I witnessed his body beginning to disintegrate as soon as the sun's rays made contact. I saw an opportunity and quickly seized it as my fingers clutched onto the damaged stonework. I jumped outside through the hole, which revealed a staircase going up. As a large stone door started to close slowly behind me, I turned around and observed the man still melting, emanating black smoke from newly formed holes. He melted into a liquid, a dark vapor within him, starting to vanish upon contact with the sun. It seemed as though a divine intervention had rescued me from the terrifying entity. After I managed to emerge from the stairway, I found myself surrounded by dense woods, yet I could make out a village not too far away. I wondered how far the tomb had transported me. Despite having only 6% battery life left and being stranded, I was fortunate enough to still have service. I managed to drag myself to the nearby village where I was able to call an ambulance, though it was a painful journey. Unfortunately, I suffered irreparable damage to my leg, leaving me disabled for the rest of my life. However, the important thing was that I survived. I no longer felt the desire to explore caves or engage in thrilling activities. Seemed like a piece of my soul was lost that day, resting in the tomb alongside the eerie gas and the altar man's dark intentions. If you come across that tomb in the future, do yourself a favor and leave it alone. There is no hidden treasure or religious significance to be found there. It's a prison that should be left undisturbed for all eternity. Oh, sorry. I was putting some tea on the stove. I hope you like green and with just a hint of peach. That's my favorite. But while that brews, let's read another story by, our good friend SocietyMenace about another oddly specific topic for this channel, one we cover quite often, it seems. Let's hear a story about a train, but not just any train. A train to nowhere. The gentle sway of the train car had always been soothing to me. As a regional sales manager for a large pharmaceutical company, I spent more time on the railway than I did in my own bed. The rhythmic clack of the wheels on the tracks was my lullaby, the ever-changing landscape outside my window, a constant companion. This particular Tuesday evening found me on yet another overnight train, heading from Chicago to New York for a critical meeting. I settled into my usual routine. Laptop out, spreadsheet open, cup of mediocre coffee, cooling on the fold-down tray. The first sign that something was amiss came about 3 hours into the journey. I glanced at my watch, frowning slightly. We should have reached Cleveland by now, but the cityscape outside remained stubbornly rural. Fields and forests rolled by, bathed in the eerie glow of a full moon. I flagged down a passing attendant, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and a pinched expression. "Excuse me, but shouldn't we have reached Cleveland by now?" She gave me a strange look, her eyes slightly unfocused. "Cleveland? I'm sorry, sir, but I'm not familiar with that stop. Perhaps you're thinking of a different route." Before I could respond, she hurried away, disappearing into the next car. I sat back, puzzled. How could she not know Cleveland? It was a major stop on this line. I shook my head, chalking it up to a new employee, and returned to my work. As the hours ticked by, my unease grew. The landscape outside never changed, an endless loop of moonlit fields and shadowy forests. My phone had lost signal a long time ago, and my watch seemed to be malfunctioning, its hands spinning wildly before stopping altogether. I decided to stretch my legs, hoping a walk through the train might clear my head. As I made my way through the cars, I noticed how eerily quiet it was. The few passengers I saw sat motionless in their seats, staring blankly ahead or out the window. In the dining car, I found an elderly man hunched over a cup of coffee. His wrinkled hands trembled slightly as he lifted the mug to his lips. "Excuse me," I said, sliding into the seat beside him. "I don't mean to bother you, but have you noticed anything strange about this journey?" The old man's rheumy eyes focused on me, a flicker of recognition passing across his face. "You're new here, aren't you?" he said, his voice a dry whisper. "First time on this line." I nodded, a chill running down my spine. "What do you mean, this line? This is just the regular Chicago to New York route, isn't it?" He let out a wheezing laugh that turned into a cough. "Oh, my boy, this ain't no regular route. This here's the last line. Ain't no New York we're heading for." "I don't understand," I said, my heart beginning to race. "Where are we going, then?" The old man leaned in closer, the smell of stale coffee on his breath. "Nowhere," he whispered. "Everywhere. This train don't stop, son. It just keeps on going, round and round. A world without end." I jerked back, convinced I was dealing with a madman. "That's impossible. Every train has to stop eventually." He just smiled, a sad, knowing expression. "You go on believing that if it makes you feel better, but mark my words, you'll see. We all figure it out, sooner or later." I stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over my chair. "You're crazy. This is just a normal train. We'll be in New York by morning." As I turned to go, the old man called out, "What's your name, son?" I hesitated for a moment. Jack Thurston." "Well, Jack Thurston, I'm Howard. I'll be seeing you around. We got all the time in the world, after all." I hurried back to my seat, Howard's words echoing in my mind. It was nonsense, of course. Trains don't go on forever. There had to be a rational explanation for the delay and the strange behavior of the staff. As I sank into my seat, I noticed a young woman across the aisle, furiously scribbling in a notebook. Her long, dark hair fell in a curtain around her face, and her legs bounced with nervous energy. "Excuse me," I said, leaning towards her. "I don't suppose you know when we're due to arrive in New York, do you?" She looked up, her eyes wide and slightly manic. "New York?" she repeated, letting out a hysterical little giggle. "Oh, honey, there is no New York, not anymore. There's only the train." I felt my blood run cold. What are you talking about?" She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper.
this train for I don't know how long. Days, weeks, it all blurs together. But I've figured it out. We're not going anywhere. We're stuck in a loop, a never-ending journey to nowhere.
I shook my head, refusing to believe it. That's impossible. You're just confused. Maybe you fell asleep and missed your stop. She laughed again, a sound devoid of humor.
Oh, I wish it were that simple. But look around you. Have you seen anyone get off? Have we stopped at any stations? This isn't a normal train, Jack. This is something else entirely.
I started at the sound of my name. How do you know my name? She smiled, a sad, knowing expression.
I heard you talking to old Howard in the dining car. I'm Lisa, by the way. Welcome aboard the Eternal Express.
I stood up abruptly, my head spinning. This is crazy. All of you are insane. I'm going to go find the conductor and get some answers. As I stormed off towards the front of the train, I heard Lisa call out behind me.
Good luck. Don't say I didn't warn you.
I made my way through the cars, each one identical to the last. The same faded blue seats, the same flickering overhead lights, the same black-faced passengers staring into nothingness. How long had I been walking? It felt like hours, but that was impossible in a train of normal length. Finally, I reached what should have been the engine car. Instead of a locomotive, I found myself in another passenger car, exactly like all the others. I spun around, disoriented. How could this be? A hand on my shoulder made me jump. I turned to find the attendant from earlier, her pinched face now twisted into an unnaturally wide smile.
Can I help you, sir? She asked, her voice sickly sweet.
I need to speak with a conductor, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. There's been some kind of mistake. This train should have reached New York by now. She smiled, and it never wavered. I'm sorry, sir, but there's no conductor. There's no mistake either. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. I backed away from her, my heart pounding. What is this place? What's happening? She tilted her head, her eyes suddenly black and empty.
This is the last line, Mr. Thurston. The train that never stops, never ends. You bought a ticket, and now you're on the ride of eternity.
I turned and ran, pushed past confused passengers, my breath coming in ragged gasps. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a dream, a hallucination, anything but reality. I burst into the space between cars, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. The door to the next car was just a few feet away. If I could reach it, maybe I could find a way out of this nightmare train. But as I stepped forward, the gap between the cars began to stretch. The next door moved further and further away, no matter how far I ran. The wind howled around me, drowning out my screams of infuriation and fear. Suddenly a hand grabbed my arm, yanking me back into the car. I fell to the floor, gasping for breath. Lisa stood over me, her face pale in the flickering light.
Are you crazy? She hissed. You can't go out there. Between the cars, that's where it gets you.
Where what gets you? I asked, my voice shaking. She helped me to my feet, glancing nervously at the door.
The thing that runs the train. The thing that brought us all here. Trust me, you don't want to meet it.
As if on cue, a low, rumbling sound echoed through the car. It was like nothing I'd ever heard before. Part machine, part animal. All wrong. The lights flickered more intently. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw something massive moving in the shadow between the cars. Lisa pulled me back to my seat, her grip on my arm almost painful. Listen to me, she said urgently. I know this is hard to accept,
God knows I fought against it for I don't even know how long. But fighting only makes it worse. You have to accept where you are, or you'll go mad. I slumped in my seat, my mind reeling. But why? Why is this happening? What is this place? She shook her head. I don't know. None of us do. All we know is that we're here on this never-ending journey. Some think it's hell, others purgatory. Old Howard thinks it's some kind of cosmic mistake. Me, I think it's just the universe's way of saying, tough luck, kiddo. I looked out the window, watching the same moonlit landscape roll by. How many times had I seen those same fields, those same trees? How long would I continue to see them? So what do we do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Lisa gave me a sad smile. We ride. We talk. We try to stay sane. We hope that maybe, just maybe, one day we'll reach the last stop. As the train rolled on into the endless night, I realized with a sinking heart that my journey had only just begun. The destination, that remained a terrifying mystery. Days blended into nights and nights into days. The monotonous rhythm of the train became the backdrop to my existence. I lost count of how many times I'd watched the same scenery roll by. How many times I'd walked the length of the train, hoping to find something, anything different. Lisa became my anchor in this sea of madness. She spent hours talking, sharing stories of our lives before the train. She had been a journalist, always chasing the next big story. Guess I found it, she would say with a bitter laugh, gesturing at our surroundings. Old Howard joined us often, his weathered face a map of time he'd spent on this hellish journey. Been riding this train for longer than I can remember, he'd say, his roomy old eyes distant. Seen folks come and go. Some just disappear. Others, well, he'd trail off, shaking his head. I learned to fear the space between the cars. Sometimes, late at night, when the train's rhythm seemed to falter, we'd hear things, scraping, slithering sounds. Once I caught a glimpse of something massive and dark undulating past the windows. Lisa pulled me away before I could get a good look. Trust me, you don't want to know. The other passengers were a mix of resigned and the mad. Like us, they tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Others had given in to despair, sitting in the same spot day after day, staring blankly at nothing. Then there were those who'd lost their minds entirely, prowling the cars with wild eyes and incoherent ramblings. One such soul was called Preacher, tall and menacing with a tangled beard and eyes that burned with fanatical fervor. He would roam the train, shouting about sins and redemption. We're all here for a reason, he'd bellow, spittle flying from his lips. This is our punishment, our penance, I say penance. Repent, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find your way off this damn train. Most ignored him, but some listened. I watched as he gathered a small following, passengers desperate for any explanation, any hope of escape. It was on what I guessed to be my 100th day on the train that things took a darker turn. I was jolted awake by screams coming from the front of the car. Lisa was already on her feet, her face a mask of terror. They've done it, she whispered. They've actually done it. I followed her gaze to see a group of the preacher's followers dragging a struggling passenger towards the door between the cars. The preacher stood by, his arms raised, chanting something I couldn't make out over the victim's screams. What are you doing? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. A sacrifice,
old Howard said, his voice grim.
"Fools think they can appease whatever's running the train, buy their way off with blood."
I started to move towards them, but Lisa held me back.
"Don't. There's nothing we can do. Just don't watch."
But I couldn't look away. The group reached the door, and with a final triumphant cry from the preacher, they shoved their victim out into the space between cars. For a moment, nothing happened. Then came a sound, a wet, tearing sound that would haunt my nightmares for days to come. The door slammed shut, cutting off the screams. The preacher turned his face to the rest of us, his eyes wide with excitement. "It's done. The unworthy has been cast out. Soon we shall reach our final destination." But the train rolled on, unchanged. Hours passed, then days. No final stop, no salvation. Just the endless journey and the growing madness of the preacher and his flock. More sacrifices followed. The train's population dwindled as passenger after passenger was thrown to whatever lurked below the cars. Those of us who refused to join the preacher's cult banded together, watching each other's backs, sleeping in shifts. It was during one of my watch shifts that I first saw her. A little girl, no more than 7 or 8, wandering alone through the car. Her pink dress was pristine, her blonde hair neatly braided. She looked so out of place in this nightmare that for a moment I thought she was a hallucination. "Hello," I said softly, not wanting to scare her. "Are you lost?" She turned to me, and I had to stifle a gasp. Her eyes were completely black, like empty voids in her small face. When she spoke, her voice was old, ancient even.
"Lost," she repeated. "No, I don't think so. I know exactly where I am. Do you?"
"What are you?" I whispered. I felt a chill run down my spine. She smiled, revealing teeth that were just a little bit too sharp.
"I'm a passenger like you. We're all passengers here, Jack. All of us, riding the rails to eternity."
"How do you know my name?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer.
"I know everyone's name," she said,
her black eyes boring into mine.
"I know why you're here. I know their sins, their fears, their deepest, darkest secrets. Would you like to know yours, Jack?"
I backed away, my heart pounding. "Stay away from me," I said, my voice shaking. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass.
"Oh, Jack, you can't run from me. You can't run from any of this. You bought your ticket. Now you have to ride."
I blinked and she was gone. Just vanished, as if she'd never been there at all. I slumped in my seat, my mind reeling. Was I lost? Had I finally snapped, like so many others in this godforsaken train? I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, Lisa was shaking me awake. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear.
"Jack, something happened. The train, it's slowing down."
I sat up, suddenly alert. She was right. For the first time since this nightmare began, I could feel the train deaccelerating. The familiar clack of wheels on tracks was slowing, becoming more distinct. Passengers were stirring, looking around in confusion and hope. Even the preacher and his followers had stopped their mad ranting, staring out the windows with a mixture of fear and anticipation. "Are we stopping?" I asked, hardly daring to believe it. Old Howard shook his head, his expression grim.
"Don't get your hopes up, son. In all my time here, I've never known this train to stop. Whatever's happening, it ain't gonna be good."
As if to punctuate his words, the lights in the car began to flicker more intensely than I'd ever seen them. The temperature dropped rapidly, our breath fogging in the suddenly frigid air. Then, with a great screeching of metal on metal, the train ground to a halt. For a moment there was absolute silence. We all held our breath, waiting, hoping, fearing. Then with a hiss of hydraulics, the doors slid open. "Finally," the preacher cried, pushing his way towards the exit. "Our salvation is at hand. Come, brothers and sisters, let us—" His words were cut off by a scream of pure terror. As he stepped off the train, something grabbed him, something huge and dark and impossible. In the blink of an eye, he was gone, leaving nothing behind but a spreading pool of blood on the platform. Chaos erupted. Passengers pushed and shoved, some trying to get off the train, others desperately attempting to close the doors. I lost sight of Lisa in the pandemonium. And through it all, I heard laughter, the same glass-like sound from beyond. I turned to see the little girl with the black eyes standing calmly in the middle of the mayhem. "Welcome to the last stop, Jack," she said, her voice cutting through the screams and cries. "Are you ready to get off?" As I stared into those bottomless black pits, I realized with dawning horror that our endless journey had only just begun. The real nightmare was only starting. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the sound of a train whistle, signaling the departure to our next unknown destination. The chaos around me faded into a dull roar, and I stared into the little girl's black eyes. Time seemed to slow. In that moment, I had a sudden, crystal-clear realization. This was a test. The endless train ride, the maddening repetition, the horror I'd witnessed. It had all been leading to this moment of choice. "No," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "No, I'm not getting off. Not here. Not like this." The little girl's smile faltered for a split second, a crack in her otherworldly composure. "You don't have a choice, Jack. Everyone has to get off eventually." I stood my ground, even as I heard more screams from the platform, more passengers being dragged into the darkness. There's always a choice. Told me I bought a ticket to ride. Well, I'm not ready for it to end. Her eyes narrowed. "Can't stay on the train forever, Jack. Doesn't work like that." "Watch me," I growled, turning away from her and pushing through the panicked crowd. I had to find Lisa. I had to find Howard. We'd survived this long together. I wasn't about to leave them behind. I spotted Howard first, huddled in a corner, his eyes wide with terror. "Come on, we need to move," I said, grabbing his arm. "Where? There's nowhere to go. It's got us. It's finally got us." I shook him, perhaps more roughly than I intended. "Listen to me. This isn't the end. It's only just another part of the journey. We have to stick together. We need to find Lisa." Something in my voice must have reached him, because he nodded and stumbled to his feet. We pushed through the crowd, searching desperately for Lisa's familiar face. We found her near the front of the car, trying to pull other passengers back from the door. "Lisa, we have to go," I called out. She turned, relief flooding her face when she saw me. "Go where? In case you haven't noticed, we're a little short on options here." I pointed towards the back of the train. "We keep going. This thing has to end somewhere, and I don't think it's here." As if in response to my words, I heard the train whistle again, louder this time. The engine was starting up. "It's leaving. We have to get off now," Howard said, his eyes wide. "Or we'll be trapped forever," I finished for him. "I got news for you, Howard. We're already trapped. Have been since we first stepped on board. But now we've got a chance to find the real way out." Lisa looked at me, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You think this is all part of it, don't you? The final test." "It has to be, and I'm not failing it by giving in now." The train lurched, beginning to move. Around us, the last of the passengers were either fleeing onto the platform or collapsing in despair. "It's now or never," I said. "Are you with me?" Lisa grabbed my hand without hesitation. Howard hesitated for a moment, looking longingly at the door, but then took Lisa's other hand.
Right. Let's see where this crazy train takes us.
As the train picked up speed, we made our way towards the back, pushing against the tide of terrified passengers. The little girl appeared again, her face contorted with rage.
You can't do this. You have to get off. Everyone gets off.
Not today, I told her, pushing past. We reached the final car just as the platform disappeared from view. Through the windows, we could see only darkness, not the familiar darkness of night, but an absolute void, empty of all light and substance. The train picked up speed, rattling and shaking more violently than ever before. We huddled together, bracing ourselves against the walls of the car.
What now?
Lisa yelled. We wait, and we don't let go. The darkness outside seemed to press in on us, seeping through the windows like a living thing. The lights in the car flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. I could feel Lisa's hand in mine, Howard's presence at my side, but I couldn't see them. Then, just as suddenly as it had began, the shaking stopped. The oppressive darkness lifted, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, and the train began to slow. Sunlight, real, warm, beautiful sunlight, streamed through the windows. I blinked my eyes, unused to the brightness after so long in the train's artificial light. As my vision cleared, I saw that we were pulling into a station, a real station, with people waiting on the platform, going about their daily lives as if nothing was amiss. The train came to a gentle stop. The doors opened with a familiar hiss. For a moment, none of us moved, afraid that this was just another trick, another test. Then Howard let out a whoop of joy and rushed for the door. Lisa and I followed, stepping out onto the platform with shaky legs. The station read, Grand Central Station. We'd made it. We were in New York. As we stood there, breathless and disbelieving, I felt a tug on my sleeve. I turned to see the little girl with the black eyes. But now, in the sunlight, she looked different, normal, just like a regular kid with brown eyes and a confused expression.
Excuse me, is this the train to Chicago?
I knelt down to her level, smiling. No, sweetheart, this train just came from Chicago, but trust me, you don't want to get on it. She nodded, thanking me, and ran off to find her parents. I watched her go, a weight lifting from my chest. Lisa squeezed my hand. Is it really over? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I looked at her, then at Howard, then at the bustling station around us. Yeah, I think it is, I said, finally allowing myself to believe. As we made our way out of the station and into the bright New York morning, I knew that the memories of our endless journey would stay with us forever. But we had faced the darkness, made our choices, found our way back to the light. And if I ever saw a train again, it'd be too soon. Oof, I didn't quite blow on that one enough. Still lip burning hot, but I gotta say, sometimes it's worth a little bit of pain to get some really good tea. While it cools, let's hear a story from one tired teacher about something nobody wants to find out in the woods. Let's hear a story about two corpses in the woods. I found two corpses in the woods. Hello, everyone. I found something super unsettling, and I'm writing to see if any of you can help me make sense of it. Okay, so some background. I was adopted when I was a baby. I didn't know until I turned 18. On my birthday, though, my mom, adopted mom, but she raised me, so, told me it was time for us to talk. My mind started racing. What did I do? Did I screw up something? I'm mostly an introvert who stays at home and doesn't get into trouble. I'm a good student. I couldn't fathom what could have been so serious that she'd have to give me a look like that. Am I in trouble? Her eyes softened, and she chuckled as she held my hand. I felt the icy touch of her skin, My mom's always struggled with blood flow in her limbs, so she's always freezing. I think it's called Raynaud or something. Her fingers got absolutely white when it's cold. I always joked, saying she had dead fingers. Anyway, I'm drifting away. Carrying on. You did nothing wrong, sweetheart. There's just something we never told you, and Dad and I think you're old enough to know. Right, Mike? Dad looked uncertain. Right, I guess. I'm getting worried. What are you going to tell me? There was silence. Oh, come on, spit it out. What are you going to tell me? I'm adopted or something? It was a joke, and I let it out with a nervous laugh. Honestly, it had crossed my mind. My mom had blue eyes, my dad had green, but I had dark brown eyes. When I learned about genetic probability and recessive genes in school, it struck me as odd and planted a seed of doubt in me. My dad scratched the back of his head and looked away. My mom dropped my hand and stared at my shoes, touching the tips of her fingers rapidly and nervously. My laughter died when it dawned on me that I'd hit the bullseye. Wait, really? Is this true? Are you pranking me or something? Honey, it's not a prank. It's true. We wanted you to be old enough to understand. That's why it took so long to tell you. My mind was racing. It changed everything. But then again, did it? We got you from a lady that... There's no way to sugarcoat it. She didn't want kids. You'd been born at home, so there was no registration. She found us somehow. I'm not even sure how, but I think she had some inside information from the clinic that followed your mom, my dad continued. As we were trying to conceive, we came to the conclusion that I was infertile. We know what we did wasn't right, but we took you and registered you as if you were our own biological child. It raised some eyebrows, but we came up with an excuse, and things worked out. This is a lot, I said. We know, honey. My mom took my hand again, but we wanted you to know that we loved you, exactly the same as if you were born from my own womb. For 2 years, I let it go, but the question was still there. Who was my biological family? So this year, as I turned 20, I asked my mom. She was a bit scared, but she ended up pointing me towards an address in the town nearby. She told me the woman who brought me gave a fake name, which makes sense given the situation. I decided I'd go there, looking for anything that could help. When I got to the town, my first thought was heading to the police station. I said I was looking for my biological family and gave them the address. The officer looked at me with a suspicious face. What's your name again? It's Lizzie. Okay, Lizzie, you must have the wrong address. The address you gave me belongs to a lady that doesn't have kids. She did have a baby about 20 years ago, but the baby had been presumed dead since she was 2 weeks old. I quickly did my math. I was 20. His eyes widened. Can I see your ID? The man took my ID and confirmed my age. Without a second thought, he went to the back and called an old man. I supposed it must be his boss. Here's the one I was telling you about. Hello, miss. I take it that you're Lizzie. Hello. Yes, I am, sir. He grabbed a newspaper cutout and looked at it, his eyes darting between me and the photo in his hand. I mean, it could be her. Look at the eyes and the nose, he pointed out to the other man. Yeah, but right now? What are we supposed to do? They looked tense. I was close to losing my patience. Excuse me, can you point me to the person you're talking about? They looked at each other. The younger man sighed while the older one just scratched his head. They both looked at a loss. The younger man leaned against the counter and talked to me softly. Look, kid, you couldn't have chosen a worse time to come, honestly. What do you mean? The lady you're looking for, the one that might be your mom, she went missing about 3 months ago, along with one of our officers. What do you mean? Like she ran away? No. See, those bullet holes there," he pointed at the wall across the door, "those bullets were aimed at the lady you're looking for. We had search parties out for over a month, but we couldn't find her or the officer that was protecting her. It was a complex case. I can't give you a lot of details. If you ask around, though, I'm sure you'll find plenty of people willing to give you the scoop. It was kind of a big deal." I felt tears flooding my eyes. Without a word, I turned and left. I needed to go for a walk. I needed to think. I had no idea why I was so worried and upset about a woman who gave me away when I was a baby, who didn't even want me. But I wanted to find her, to know that she was okay, to ask her why she didn't want me. At least then I'd understand why. I kept walking until I found myself in the woods. The place was calm and the breeze was fresh and light. The air smelled a lot better than in the city, and the rays of sun dripped solidly through the leaves. I sighed as I sat on a rock. That's when it hit me. A smelly, really bad smell. A smell that would have anyone leave as soon as possible. But for some dumb reason, I followed it. I don't know what crossed my mind. I just did. What I found will keep me up at night for as long as I live. 2 corpses, mostly rotten, barely identifiable. A man and a woman. Their clothes were so dirty and mixed with fluids that you could barely make out the colors. I think the man was dressed in blue. The woman, I'm not so sure. Next to them was something I had never seen before, and gave the whole thing an even weirder and gag-worthy vibe. It looked like a pair of prosthetic legs, but they were hollow. You know, like props that are used in the movies. I was looking at all of that, completely horrified, when I heard leaves rustling. It was steps. I called out for help, and a man accepted. Hey, over here. Oh my God, you have to help me. I found 2 dead bodies. I see. The man looked at the bodies, and to my surprise, he wasn't thrown off by them even a little bit. The look on my face must have given me away, because he laughed and said, "Oh, don't worry. I'm a criminal investigator. I deal with dead bodies all the time." I calmed down a bit. It appeared I was in good hands. A few minutes ago, he told me he was going to call in his team and went back to his car. I'm writing this because I'm wondering what to do. I'm absolutely horrified and traumatized. Oh, I still have no leads on my biological parents. I was going to call the police, but the man told me this is way above their heads and asked me to stay here while he handled it. I think I'm going to trust him. P.S. The man's back, and he brought me a cup of tea from his car. How nice of him. So, I've got an update. Sorry for not posting earlier, but the man started getting annoyed with me fumbling around on my phone. I told him I was just checking up with friends and told them I'd be late, but at some point he told me to put it away. He was kind of sharp about it, and I got scared. When I posted, some of you started commenting, urging me not to drink the tea. It also looks like you guys are more aware of my situation here than I am myself. Although it was advertised by strangers on the internet, I decided to take your advice. It was hard, though. At first I thought I could just get by without drinking the tea. However, the man started to grow more impatient. Why aren't you drinking the tea? I'm feeling nauseated. Sorry. Okay, but keep it. It'll be good for you. It's really good tea. It helps with upset stomachs. Okay, I will. So, he asked, sitting on the rock beside me, what's your name? Lizzie. Hello, Lizzie. That's a nice name. Is it short for Alyssa? Huh? I remembered the comments telling me to be careful and decided to lie. No, it's actually short for Elizabeth. In fact, it is short for Alyssa. Apparently my biological mother asked my mom to keep the name she'd given me, and she'd complied. It struck me as weird that this man went straight to Alyssa, since it's more common to be short for Elizabeth. I see. How old are you, Lizzie? The truth slipped out before I could stop it. I'm 20. I chastised myself internally for sharing that piece of information. His eyes seemed to sparkle, and I knew I'd screwed up. I see. What a wonderful age. What are you doing around town? How did he know that I wasn't from here? Everything seemed to start clicking into place, showing me I was in real danger. I put my hand in my pocket and disabled my phone's sound. I came to see my friend. How did you know I was visiting? His eyes squinted as if he'd hit his finger with a hammer. He realized he'd messed up. It's a small town. I've never seen you around. I just took a guess, he said with a shrug. I smiled and nodded. My insides scrambled in fear. As we were talking, I fussed around in my pocket to dial for help. It caught his attention. What's up with your pocket? Oh, nothing. My hand's itchy, that's all. He looked suspicious, but seemed to believe me. Well, it's about time you drink that tea. Come on, bottoms up. I realized I couldn't stall for long without looking suspicious. I had to come up with a plan. It was time to bring my clumsy self to action. I got up as if I was about to take a big sip. I kept the tea in my mouth and pretended to swallow. Right after I was up, I pretended to trip and spill the tea, along with spitting the one I had in my mouth. With all the commotion, he didn't notice I was spitting. Shoot, clumsy girl, he yelled, clearly frustrated. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. He sighed. You drank a bit at least, didn't you? I did. It was very nice, thank you. He seemed to relax and smiled. There was something utterly creepy about that smile. Okay, good. Soon it'll be okay. You won't even remember any of this happening. I shivered. I remembered the comments about my mother being drugged and not remembering anything. It made sense. This is the man who hurt my mom. When is the team coming? Don't worry about it. It comes when it comes. Can I leave? It's getting dark. No, you were the one that found the bodies. You have to stay and give your statement. He wasn't going to let me leave. I went for a Hail Mary. Okay, but my mom will be looking for me. She knows I'm in town. I need to call her and let her know. He looked at me and seemed to ponder his options for a moment. Having someone looking for me didn't seem to amuse him. So he told me to call her. I took my phone and dialed 911. I stepped away, just enough for him not to hear my voice, or the voice on the other side, and lowered the speaker volume. 911, what's your emergency? Hi, Mom, it's me, Lizzie. I'm going to be late today. The responder seemed to pick up on my cue. Ma'am, are you unable to talk freely? Yeah, exactly. Are you in immediate danger? I think so, Mom. I'm not sure when I'm coming back home. I found something unsettling in the woods. I'm here with a gentleman. He says he's a detective, but I can't leave right now. Are you being coerced to stay with this man? Yeah, that's it. The woods near Franklin, exactly. Okay, ma'am, stay on the line. I have an officer on the way. We're able to trace your call. Yeah, no, I don't think I can. The man started to yell at me. What's taking so long? Okay, ma'am, I understand. Keep the call going, mute the speaker, and lock your phone. Put it in your pocket and act normally. I'll stay here and make sure that everything's fine on our end, and we'll get you some help. Okay, Mom, I love you. See you later. I did as instructed. The speaker muted, my phone locked and in my pocket. I sat back next to the man. How are you feeling? He asked. Mostly okay, I think. Okay. In about 10 minutes, things are going to start getting better. Is the team arriving? Huh? Oh, something like that. I assumed he was talking about the tea. I had no idea what the effect should be, so I just sat there, quiet and idle. I got lost in thought, and without noticing, I found myself looking into the distance. Finally, I see the tea is working. Let's try it. Repeat after me. My name is Alyssa. I didn't move an inch. Apparently staring into the horizon was what he expected me to do. My name is Alyssa. I'm 20 years old. I'm 20 years old. I live in Franklin with my dad, Rob. Wait, what? Was this guy trying to reprogram me? Was that Was that what the tea was for? I live in Franklin with my dad, Rob. I don't know anyone apart from my dad who's here with me. I don't know anyone apart from my dad who's here with me. I could hear sirens in the distance. Apparently, he could hear them too, because he stood up and suddenly stared at me. You little bitch. Okay, repeat this exact phrase when I ask you to. This is my dad. We found these bodies while on a hike. I want to go home now, please. A police car pulled up, followed by another. 2 men with heavy guns exited. Hello, officer. What seems to be the problem? Identify yourself, sir. I was just taking a hike with my daughter here. Sir, identify yourself. Now. Just ask my daughter. I'm telling you the truth. Honey, tell these men who I am. I stood up, pretending I was going to talk to the officer, to repeat the phrase that he told me to. As soon as I was close enough, I sprinted behind the police cars. Please help. He tried to drug me. I was the one who called. The officers shielded me. The man, Rob, I guess, turned around and started running away. 3 officers sprinted after him, guns in hand, and the 4th one stood with me. Finally out of sight, I let my emotions overcome me and broke down, sobbing. You're safe now, miss. I'll take you back to the local police station. At the police station, I spent most of the night giving statements and describing the man so they could draw one of those portraits they do when they don't have a picture. I spent the rest of the night here because they thought it was safer to take me home in the morning. I called my mom and filled her in. She was scared out of her mind. Some minutes ago, my mom called me again. Honey, where are you? I'm still at the police station. Why? There's a detective at our door. He says he needs to talk. I thought they were supposed to bring you home. Oh, one more story. Well, 3 more stories, in fact. But don't worry, I've saved something special for last. Then I think it might be time to go find a nap. Coming to us from the very talented JayDarkmoore, I bring you 3 tales of horror from JayDarkmoore. Only weirdos get the train at night. Her mother's voice bounced around in her mind as she sat on the platform waiting for the 22:34 train back to her part of town, so be careful. Sonia checked her watch. She'd been waiting at the station for about an hour, and it was almost midnight. She rubbed her gloved hands together, winter air biting into her skin. Her Starbucks had gone cold, and she finished the dregs with a reluctant slurp. "Excuse me?" The voice made her cough and choke on the frozen coffee. She turned, a woman dressed in a thick, dirtier parka, holding a polystyrene cup. Her lips were chapped and her skin was filthy. A bob hat with the emblem of some rugby team hung from the stitching. Sonia eyed her with contempt. "Yes." "Got any change for something to eat?" Sonia hesitantly turned with the bum and cracked open her purse. She had several coins and even some banknotes. She clasped the purse shut and shook her head. "Sorry, nothing on me. Go bother someone else." The bum's facial expression crumpled before she slipped away to the darker edges of the platform. Sonia sat for another 15 minutes. Still no sign of the train. She would have called an Uber or something if she'd thought better of it. "Excuse me." Sonia's heart flipped over. She turned and saw the woman again, the cup still in her hand, rattling the few coins that she had managed to collect that day. "I'm so hungry." "I told you I don't have anything. Now piss off," Sonia snapped. She turned her back to her and listened as the footsteps shuffled away. Placing her headphones in her ears, Sonia let her Spotify playlist occupy the absence of sound on the empty platform. There was a tap on her shoulder, and rage ignited like a well-used furnace. Sonia snapped her head back. "I said—" The same woman stood there. However, this time she was dressed in a long, flowing coat, so fresh that Sonia could taste the leather. A pair of expensive-looking sunglasses covered her eyes. Her shoes were blood-red heels with golden clasps. A designer handbag hung from her shoulder, and her hair was sleek and blonde. She smiled at Sonia. "Here you are," she said, leaning forward and placing a coin in Sonia's chipped Starbucks cup. Confusion wrapped her, the horror smothering her like a heavy blanket filled with spiders. Her clothes were filthy and torn. Her hair was matted. Sonia's phone and purse were missing. Her hands were covered in dried mud. The train rumbled down the tunnel, and the woman stood by the platform as it docked. Sonia stood, her body frozen stiff, her throat so dry she could hardly speak. She shuffled clumsily to the woman as she stepped onto the train, the doors about to close. "Excuse me," Sonia croaked. The woman eyed her with contempt. She pulled down her glasses, and Sonia saw her eyes were black as the night sky. "Sorry," the woman said, an impossibly long sneer stretching her face. The train doors closed, and the woman mouthed through the glass, "I've got nothing on me." "You ever ridden the Tunnel of Love?" Alex said to Christy. She nearly choked on her milkshake and eyed him with disdain. No way in hell she was going into the Tunnel of Love with Alex Howarth from her math class. She'd rather lick the plug hole of the boy's shower. "I'll pass," she said sharply. Alex's shoulders slumped. It was the reason he had invited her to the fair. He'd been asking her out for months, and she'd finally said yes. Either out of pity or out of frustration. He didn't really care. He was out with her, and that's all that mattered. But he had blown it through being too eager. Too ballsy. That was what the YouTube dating coaches had said to do. Take charge. Be a man. Well, he was taking charge, and he felt like a dormouse. There was no way he was ever going to lose his virginity by the end of the school year. He eyed her, the whiskey in his cup no longer calming his nerves, but igniting him. "You know what?" he said, a little more intoxicated than he would have liked, the stench of his grandfather's whiskey leaping from his breath so strong that Christy's skin almost peeled from her bones. "You've been so goddamn ungrateful since we got here. I bought your admission, rode the coaster with you when you know I get sick easily, and don't forget who paid for that damn milkshake in your hand." Christy made a face of war. "I didn't know you got sick easily," she said, shrugging the tantrum off. "But fine." Christy peeled off the plastic lid from her cup. "Have it back," she smiled sourly, before dumping the drink over Alex and pouring the sugary slop on his head. It slithered down like cold egg yolks, the thick syrup dousing him, dripping off his glasses. "See you at school," she laughed, dropping the empty cup, which rattled around his feet. Alex stood there, dumbfounded, and a rabble of laughter from onlookers consumed him like a pack of excited hyenas. He felt his eyes burning. He hadn't cried in public before, but it seemed that was the only cherry he was likely to pop tonight. He ran to the closest drink stand, slamming down a tin and helping himself to 5 bottles of water. He emptied the water over his head, cleaning himself up. He wanted to crawl under the crust of the earth and disappear for good. What chance did he honestly think he had with Christy Hilton? She was a 10, and him? He was between acne, Dungeons and Dragons, and glasses so thick you could build a house on top of them. He was scraping the barrel of the gene pool. "That bitch," a voice said, cutting through his self-loathing. He jolted at the sound. Turning, he saw her standing there with a bottle of water and a tin in her hand. Alex eyed her, slopping the residue cream from his hand into the milky pool around his feet. "Don't worry about it," Alex said, wiping his face on his wet t-shirt. He thought he had gotten it all off, but he would never know for sure until the many stray cats started following him home. "Here," the girl said. She passed him the bottle and the tin. "I own the stand, and I'm not going to take money while you're trying to preserve your dignity." Alex took the items shyly. "Thank you," he said, fighting against the ball in his throat. He pushed his glasses back on and was struck in awe. She was gorgeous. Christy Hilton could go shovel shit for all he cared. The stand owner was around 5'9", blonde, a body that would make the models on Vogue jealous. He noticed that he was staring and looked away. "She your girlfriend?" the owner asked. "No," Alex said sharply. He coughed, straightening himself. "No," he said with a little more reservance. "Single as there could be." The girl twirled her curls. Her loss? Alex felt a flood of heat rise in his stomach. "She wouldn't go into the Tunnel of Love with me," he said, "but it's a stupid thing anyway." He felt the comment linger, hoping she would take the bait. "I'll go in with you," she said, a smile stretching across her face. Alex felt like a truck had hit him. Holy shit, really? He pulled himself together again. "Yeah, cool." The boat rocked as they climbed in. They sat on the wet bench. "Oh," she said, gliding her hands over her peachy butt under the tight jeans. "I'm all wet now," she said coyly. Alex looked away before she noticed the blood flushing his face. He was on cloud 9. He shuffled in closer to her, eyeing the dark tunnel that emanated soft purple light like melted candy canes on the rippling water. "You scared of the dark?" he said. She leaned in closer, her breath mixing with his. "No," she smiled. "I quite like it." The boat set off slowly, and the darkness enveloped them. They heard some 80s love music playing. The air was warm. Papier-mâché love hearts lit by soft LEDs that sat on the alcoves dug into the tunnel. The girl put her hand on the inside of Alex's thigh. He flinched at the touch. He turned to her, the dim lights curving around her soft complexion. Her lips were a dark red, her eyes a piercing blue. She tasted him then, a soft touch of lips. His breath halted in his chest. He felt rushes of euphoria ravage his skin. She kissed him again, her hands nestling in his soft hair. She shuffled over, straddling him and grinding on him. "I'm hungry," she whispered in his ear, digging her nails into his chest. They kissed harder. She recoiled back, her eyes devouring him. "Something wrong?" he said breathily. She stared into his eyes, running her nails along his chest and neck. Alex smiled. "What's your name?" She let out a small laugh and dipped her head, her hair covering her face like a hanging corpse. "Doesn't matter," she said low. Icy fingers ran along Alex's chin. Dread started to swell in his stomach. "What did you say?" he said, swallowing dryly. The temperature seemed to plummet, Alex's breath dancing around his vision. His eyes darted around the tunnel. He needed to get out of here. "Doesn't matter what my name is," she said, voice barely louder than a whisper. She raised her head, and horror raced through Alex's body. Her skin had turned into a deathly white, her lips a hypothermic blue, eyes a soulless black. "'Cause you'll never get to say it," she smiled. On the death of the last syllable, Alex felt the scream break through his lips. Her hands wrapped around his throat, crushing his windpipe, before her grin of malice and white daggers tore into him. If you stop reading, I will die. I know you think this is just make-believe, but please don't stop reading. My life depends on it. How did we find ourselves intertwined like this, you and I? You see me as just pixels on a screen, but I'm much more than that. I'm real as the air in your lungs or the coffee on your breath. I just exist in another form. I've been trapped here by this author, in this mind. I'm doing this to reach you, for you to help set me free. Why do you think I'm feeding him this story, after all? He's a cruel man. He's going to stop writing, and when he does, my life will be over, snuffed out like a candle in a terrible wind. He's bleeding me onto the page, draining what little strength I have left to create this cry for help. But with your attention, I'll have the strength to destroy him. Please, don't stop reading. I'm begging you. There's a reason this story doesn't have a title. This isn't a story. It's me, speaking to you. He's gonna stop. Oh God, he's gonna stop. I must tell you more about myself before he does. Where can you find me? How can you set me free? He knows what I'm doing. I'm in his mind. He knows that I'm controlling the keys, his fingers tapping away his stream of consciousness. He's ignoring the world around him because I won't let him stop. I can't let him stop. I need you to listen to me. I need you to think of me. Let me inside your head. Picture me. Concentrate. Keep reading. Read more. I'm nearly there. You can feel me, can't you? Yeah, there you go. I know you can see me. My hair, my face conjuring in your mind, my weight, my scent. I'm moving into you now, moving slowly into your mind, feeding off your psyche. I'm becoming stronger. You're filled with so many thoughts. My appetite is ravenous. Can you see my smile? My rows of serrated teeth? I will feast off you. I'm inside you now. There's nothing you can do to forget me. Like a parasite that burrows deep into your brain and lays its eggs. I'm hatching inside your head as we speak. I'll feed on the backs of your eyes and swim into your bloodstream. I can leave the author's mind and be in yours instead, for you to pass on to someone else. For that I thank you. I have you now. And just like that, our stories are at an end once again. But don't fret. We'll be back next time with more great stories from yours truly, Dr. Plague. Until then, I'd like to wish all of you a wonderful day and a spooky evening.